my breath hitched. It wasn't the sweet, anticipatory gasp of a sister thrilled for a wedding. No, this was a cold, sharp jab to the ribs delivered with the casual cruelty my mother, Pamela James, had perfected over 3 decades of my life. Savannah, there just isn't room for everyone at the wedding. She'd said her voice was light, airy, floating through the phone line as if she were discussing the weather, not methodically carving me out of a core family memory. Funny how everyone was such a flexible term. It seemed to stretch to include Tiffany Chloe's nail technician, a woman who had once given me a withering, condescending look when I'd opted for a classic French manicure instead of the glitter-encrusted talons she favoured. It also apparently included Brenda, my sister's ex-roommate from a brief, disastrous foray into college, and Brenda's current boyfriend, a guy named Chad, whose entire personality seemed to be a collection of graphic tees and an affinity for craft beer, and in a detail that felt like a punchline to a joke I didn't find funny. The guest list had room for Winston, our family's golden retriever. I later saw a grainy pre-wedding photo of him sporting a custom-made doggy tuxedo that probably cost a small fortune. But me, Savannah James, the 30-year-old older sister, the one who co-signed Chloe's first car loan because her credit was shot, the one who spent a whole weekend helping Dad assemble a labyrinthian IKEA bookshelf, the one who always remembered Mum's birthday, Chloe's birthday, their half-birthday, their favourite colour day. Birthday, apparently, I was an inconvenient extra, a line item to be cut from the budget of family affection. I didn't fit into their small, curated guest list. Oh was all I managed to push past the lump forming in my throat. The shock momentarily stole my voice, leaving a hollow space where a protest should have been. But don't worry, sweetie. Mum chirped, the forced cheerfulness grating on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. It was the same voice she used when telling me the dress I liked wasn't flattering, or that my career choice was safe but not exciting. We're going to live stream the whole thing. We hired a professional company. You can watch it online, like you're right there with us right there, but not like a fan watching a concert from the nosebleed section on a jumbotron like a ghost haunting the edges of my own family's celebration. I was being offered a front row seat to my own exclusion. So I did what they suggested. I swallowed the hurt, the familiar sting of being relegated to the sidelines. I told myself it didn't matter. It was Chloe's day, her grand production. Who was I to demand a speaking role when I'd always been cast as a silent stagehand, just watched? And I waited because a small, cold part of me, the part that had been a quiet witness to years of carefully constructed facades and simmering resentments, suspected that this perfectly planned day was a house of cards, and I had a feeling a strong wind was about to blow. Hey, I'm Savannah James. I am 30. I live in a quiet neighbourhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've spent the better part of my life feeling like a post-it note reminder in a family that prefers handwritten calligraphy, while my younger sister Chloe danced through life on a sunbeam of praise and parental funding. I was the sensible one. The sturdy foundation that no one ever noticed until they needed something to stand on. Quiet, Savannah responsible. Savannah, let's be honest, in their eyes I was boring. Savannah. This dynamic wasn't new. It was etched into the very fabric of our childhood. I remember my 10th birthday, I had asked for a simple slumber party with 3 of my closest friends. Chloe, then 6 threw a monumental tantrum because she wanted a pony-themed party. Despite her birthday being 6 months away, my slumber party was cancelled, replaced by a tense family dinner where I was given a more practical gift, a savings bond, while Chloe was promised a pony ride adventure just to make her feel included. I learned early that my desires were negotiable, while Chloe's were non-negotiable demands. When I won the statewide science fair in high school, a project I'd poured hundreds of hours into, my parents said, "That's nice, honey." Before their attention was immediately diverted to Chloe, who had just been cast as the third tree from the left in the middle school play. Her role required a massive handmade costume that consumed my mother's time and energy. For weeks, my trophy gathered dust on a shelf in my room. Photos of Chloe in her felt and cardboard tree costume were framed and placed on the mantel. Stability became my defining and most overlooked trait. I got a degree in project management, a field that appealed to my love of order and predictability. I got a good job, built a solid credit score, and started saving diligently. Chloe, meanwhile, flitted from one passion to another, a jewellery-making business that ended with a box of unsold beads, a failed attempt at being a yoga instructor, a short-lived career as a lifestyle blogger. Each venture was funded by a generous investment from Mum and Dad. I never asked for a dime after I graduated, and in a twisted way, my independence made me invisible. They didn't have to worry about me, so they simply didn't. So when the ultimate snub arrived, it wasn't a shocking betrayal. It was the logical conclusion to a lifetime of being treated as an afterthought. The official news didn't come from a calligraphed invitation in the mail. No, I found out about my sister's engagement. Like a common stranger scrolling through Facebook. There it was. Chloe had changed her relationship status to engaged to Logan Davies. The announcement was accompanied by a dozen professionally shot photos of them frolicking on a beach at sunset, looking deliriously happy and impossibly perfect. Logan was handsome, came from old money, and seemed utterly oblivious to the complex web of dysfunction he was marrying into. He was perfect for Chloe. A few days later, my phone rang. It was, "Mom, Savannah, honey, isn't it? Just wonderful about Chloe. And Logan. We are over the moon. Absolutely thrilled. It's great. Mum, I'm happy for them." I said, my voice flatter than I intended. "Now about the wedding," she began, and I could hear the shift in her tone. The careful placement of words. "We've had to make some very, very difficult decisions. Logan's family is quite large, you see, and the venue has a strict capacity. We're aiming for a very curated guest list, very intimate curated." I repeated the word. It hung in the air between us, cold and sharp. I pictured my mother with a red pen striking my name from a list, with a decisive flick of her wrist. Not a good fit for the collection, clashes with the other pieces. "Yes, darling, it's all about the aesthetic. You understand, it's not personal, but it felt deeply personal. It felt like the culmination of every ignored achievement, every dismissed opinion, every time I was told to be the bigger person. But you won't miss a thing. We're setting up a fantastic live stream, a professional service. It will be just like you're in the front row. Just like it." But not it, a cheap imitation. The official invitation arrived a week later. It wasn't a thick, creamy envelope, but a cold, automated email from a company called Ever After Events. The subject line read, "Chloe and Logan's wedding livestream access." Inside was a sterile-looking graphic with their names, a Zoom link, and a password that was a jumble of letters and numbers. It felt less like an invitation and more like a receipt for a transaction I never wanted to make. My social media feeds became a minefield of wedding-related content. There were photos from the bridal shower, a lavish champagne-fueled affair at a country club I knew I could never afford to join. There were giddy boomerangs from the bachelorette party in Vegas, a blur of sequins cocktails and matching bride, i.e. tribe sashes. I saw pictures of people I barely knew, distant cousins and old neighbours all beaming. All included, the final straw was the picture of Winston in his tiny tuxedo. Even the dog was considered essential personnel. Each post was a fresh twist of the knife. I tried to numb the ache. I told myself I was busy. I told myself I hated big weddings anyway. I told myself I was saving money on a gift and a dress, but late at night, in the quiet of my apartment, the lies would crumble, leaving behind the raw, undeniable hurt of being intentionally left out by the people who were supposed to love me most. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Henderson, our old neighbour at the grocery store. Her face lit up Savannah. "My goodness, you look wonderful. I was so thrilled to hear about Chloe's wedding. Such a handsome young man. I bet your mother is just losing her mind with." "Excitement. What are you wearing to the big day?" The question ambushed me. My face grew hot. "Oh, it's going to be a very small, intimate affair," I stammered, pairing my mother's words. "I'm actually going to be watching from home. They're doing a live stream for people who couldn't make it." Mrs. Henderson's smile faltered, replaced by a look of pity that was almost worse than the exclusion itself. Oh dear. Well, that's modern. She patted my arm awkwardly before rushing off toward the dairy aisle. I abandoned my cart and fled the store, the shame burning in my cheeks. The wedding day arrived a sweltering Saturday in June that felt oppressive and heavy. The air was thick with humidity, and my own resentment, I decided if I was going to watch this train wreck, I was going to do it in style. I went to the fancy wine shop and bought a bottle of crisp, expensive Sauvignon Blanc that I'd been saving for a special occasion. This, I decided grimly, was a special occasion of a different sort. I logged into the Zoom link 10 minutes early, my screen filled with a static shot of the altar, which was drowning in a sea of white roses and baby's breath, a professionally designed banner. At the bottom of the screen read, "A Day of Love," in a swirling romantic font. In the corner of the screen was a small chat box, already filled with blandly cheerful messages from other digital cast-offs. "So excited for you both. The Millers wishing you a lifetime of happiness." Aunt Carol. I recognised Aunt Carol's name. She was another family member deemed not curated enough for an in-person invitation. A faceless moderator named Danny occasionally typed, "Welcome to the live stream. The ceremony will begin shortly." The music started a saccharine string quartet version of a pop song that made my teeth ache. The processional began. I saw Logan at the altar looking nervous and sick in his tuxedo. I saw Mum in the front row. Her posture ramrod straight, a strained, painted-on smile on her face, as if she were personally holding the event together through sheer force of will. Dad sat beside her, looking as always like a man who had wandered into the wrong movie. Then came Chloe. She was a vision in white, of course, but her beauty was marred by a visible tension around her mouth. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, which darted around the crowd as she walked down the aisle on Dad's arm, less like a blissful bride, and more like a general inspecting her troops. The ceremony was a masterclass in awkwardness. The officiant, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stumbled over Logan's last name, calling him Logan Davis, and then Logan Davies Smith, before finally settling on the correct pronunciation. Then, one of the bridesmaids wobbling on 2 high heels tripped on the runner, letting out a small shriek and nearly taking a floral arrangement down with her, and then the microphone started acting up. It crackled and popped during the vows, cutting out entirely during Logan's heartfelt promises. Chloe's face already tight-hardened into a mask of pure fury. She shot a venomous glare at a sound technician in the wings. Logan, flustered, tried to project his voice, but it was lost in the cavernous space. I took a long, slow sip of my wine. This was better than reality. TV, then came the reception speeches. The maid of honour, a friend of Chloe's I'd never liked, gave a gushing, vapid speech full of inside jokes. Then the best man, a guy named Dave with a receding hairline and the overconfident swagger of a man who'd had too much to drink, took the microphone. He started off well enough with predictable stories about Logan's college antics, but as he went on, his words began to slur and his filter evaporated. And Logan, man, what a journey, he boomed, swaying slightly from those wild nights at State to this, and we got to give a special shout-out to his legendary bachelor weekend in Vegas. A true last Harrow few of Logan's friends whooped and cheered. I saw my mother smile, freeze, and then crumble. Chloe's head snapped toward Logan, her eyes narrowing into slits. Dave, oblivious, barreled on. I mean, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Am I right? Unless you bring back a killer hangover and some, let's just say, very questionable memories from a place called the Kitten Club. An icy silence fell over the room. The air crackled. The Kitten Club. Chloe, who had always preached about loyalty and trust, looked like she had been slapped. Logan, his face ashen, lunged for the microphone. Okay, Dave, thanks, buddy. Great speech. That's enough. But Chloe was faster. She snatched the microphone from his hand. Her knuckles white, her voice when she spoke was no longer the sweet, high-pitched tone she used for public consumption. It was low-sharp and laced with ice. Logan, we talked about this. No details from your little boy's trip, honey. It was just a stupid joke. Logan stammered, his eyes wide with panic as he looked from Chloe to his horrified parents in the front row. A joke. Chloe's voice rose trembling with rage, echoing through the cavernous silence. Oh, a joke about what exactly? About... You are embarrassing me at my own wedding. What happened at the kitten club? Logan, what questionable memories are we laughing about? A guest in the third row let out a nervous cough. Someone near the back dropped a champagne flute. The sound of the glass shattering on the marble floor was like a gunshot splintering the last vestigages of pretense, and in that precise, beautiful moment of pure, unadulterated chaos, the live stream froze. My laptop screen was stuck on a perfect digital painting of disaster. Chloe mid-scream. Her face, a mask of incandescent rage, was holding her expensive bouquet of white roses, not like a bride, but like a war club. Logan stood beside her, his mouth agape in a silent O of utter bewilderment and terror. Mum was in the background, her hand half raised her face, a canvas of horror. The shattered glass lay scattered on the floor, each shard glinting like a tiny malevolent star under the harsh lighting, and at the bottom of it all, the banner remained a monument to irony. Chloe and Logan, a day of love I just stared. The silence in my apartment was deafening. The frozen tableau on my screen held more truth about my family than any of the smiling perfect photos ever had. It was a masterpiece of dysfunction. Hours passed. I finished the bottle of wine. I ordered a pizza. The screen remained frozen. Then my phone buzzed. It was a group message from Mom sent to a list of relatives and presumably the other livestream viewers. Dearest friends and family, please disregard any technical difficulties with the livestream. Earlier, we are dealing with a minor issue. We ask that you please do not share or repost any part of the footage. This was a private event, and we value our privacy during this time. Thank you for your understanding a minor issue, a private event. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Too late. In the age of the internet, nothing broadcast is ever truly private. Sure enough, a few hours later, my phone lit up with a notification from TikTok. A friend had tagged me in a video. The caption read, "OMG, you guys have to see this bride freaks out at her own wedding after best man spills the tea, wedding, fail groom, exposed bridezilla." I clicked play. It was a shaky 60-second clip, clearly recorded by someone pointing their phone at their own computer screen during the live stream. It captured Dave's entire speech. Chloe's furious reaction. The argument. The sound of the glass shattering. It already had 500,000 views. The comments were a dumpster fire of glorious speculation. The kitten club. He's toast her face at the end. Lol, this is why you don't live stream weddings. Someone had already clipped the final frozen frame and turned it into a meme with captions like, "My face when they're out of my favourite wine," and when you see the bill after a night out, it was everywhere. It was a viral catastrophe. The carefully curated, perfectly aesthetic wedding had imploded for the entire world to see. That night, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail a minute later. It rang again. Silenced. A text appeared. "Savannah, I know you're there. Pick up the phone. This is a family emergency." I sighed and answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Mum. Savannah, did you see it? Did you see what they're saying? Online, it's a nightmare. Your sister is inconsolable. You have to do something. Do something." I asked, calmly swirling the last of my wine in my glass. "What would you like me to do? You're good with computers. You have to get them to take it down. Call TikTok, call the internet. This is defamation, Mum. That's not how it works, and it's not defamation. If it actually happened," I said, my voice even, "you're the one who wanted to broadcast it." There was a choked sound on the other end. "How can you be so cold? Your family is falling apart. My family told me there wasn't room for me." I replied, the words coming out clear and steady. "So with all due respect, I'm not sure this is my emergency to handle. I'm just a viewer." Remember, I ended the call before she could respond. I turned off my laptop. The frozen image of chaos finally disappearing from my sight, though it was burned into my memory. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. They said I wasn't invited. I whispered to the quiet of my apartment, but I still got the front row seat. 1 month later, the digital dust had settled, though the Kitten Club wedding meme still made occasional appearances online. Chloe and Logan, I heard through the grapevine, had not gone on their honeymoon. They were in intensive couples therapy. Mum had disowned the best man, and Dad was spending a lot of time in his garage for me. Life had become surprisingly clear. The wedding disaster was a catalyst, shaking me free from the role I'd been playing for 30 years. I was done being the quiet, responsible support beam for a house that was structurally unsound. It was time to build my own. I took the money I'd been saving for years, the down payment for a future I was always putting on hold, and I became serious about buying an investment property. I spent weeks researching, talking to agents and visiting properties. I was no longer boring Savannah, I was strategic. Savannah forward-thinking. Savannah, I found it on a leafy street in a neighbourhood on the verge of a renaissance. A small but charming 2-bedroom bungalow with a wide front porch and a huge backyard. It needed some work, but it had good bones. It felt solid. It felt real the day I signed the closing papers. A feeling of profound accomplishment washed over me. It was a quiet victory, witnessed by no one but my real estate agent and a notary. There were no photographers, no gushing announcements, no need for a curated guest list. This was mine. A few weeks after that, I was scrolling a local business journal online when a headline caught my eye. Luxury wedding venue, the Grand Terrace files for bankruptcy following viral incident. I read the article. The negative publicity from Chloe's wedding had been catastrophic. A flood of cancellations had followed, and the venue's reputation was in tatters. I thought about the sheer amount of money my parents must have spent to book that place, all for a perfectly curated image that had shattered so spectacularly. I, on the other hand, had just secured a tangible asset, a foundation for my own future. For a fraction of that cost, that evening, I met Uncle Rick for the coffee. I'd promised him he was nursing a black coffee, his eyes crinkling at the corners as I sat down, so he said, leaning forward, "I heard you've been busy buying up half the city, are we?" I smiled, just a small piece of it, something for myself. "Good for you, kid." Seriously, he took a sip. "It's been a circus back at home. Your mother is trying to orchestrate a public relations campaign to salvage your sister's reputation. Your father has taken up whittling, very small, angry-looking birds, mostly." I laughed a real unburdened laugh, and Chloe and Logan, last. I heard they were arguing about the correct way to load a dishwasher. I give it 6 months. He looked at me, his sarcastic veneer dropping for a moment. "You know, you were always the smart one." "Savannah, the one who saw things clearly." "I'm glad you're finally putting yourself first." "It took a while," I admitted, "but I'm getting there." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the hum of the coffee shop, a pleasant backdrop. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realised was missing. I was no longer on the outside, looking in. I was in my own life in the driver's seat. I turned off my laptop that night and looked around my cosy living room, a space that was entirely mine. It was quiet, it was peaceful, it was free. The quiet ones I thought were not boring. We're just observing, learning, and waiting for the right moment to make our move. And while they were all busy picking up the pieces of their shattered party, I was quietly building an empire. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been pushed aside only to come out on top, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because the quiet ones we're always watching and we never ever forget.